你们好. Thank you for being here. I promise you this is going to be a great evening. I understand that people in Singapore are some of the smartest people in the world. Is that true? Did anyone not understand the question? Well, that means you can take a lot of information in a short period of time. Is that right? Say yes. Yes. So I'm going to give you a lot of good ideas very fast, like dealing cards. Okay? Now, I came to Singapore first in 1968. In 1968, you've seen the old parts of Singapore? All of Singapore was the old parts. I came back again in 1989. I was here in 1968, 69, 1970. I was away for many years. I came back in 89, and Singapore was suddenly the best run country in the world. Cleanest city, best run country in the world. In half a generation, you beat everybody, and now you beat the United States in gross national product per person. Is that right? When are you going to stop? Where else can you go from here? I am so proud of you. I am so proud of you. Everywhere I go, I talk about Singapore. I love this country. If I wasn't living in the United States, where the climate is nice, I would love to live in Singapore. This is a beautiful place. What you've created here is a triumph of the human mind, because Singapore has been built on mind power, not manpower. Singapore has been built with brains and ability and talent and drive and vision and determination. It is really an incredible place. It's really an incredible place, and so I congratulate you, and I tell you I'm very happy to be here. And I'm very happy to be able to share some ideas that may help you move even faster forward. Now, I have some good news for you, and I have more good news, and only good news tonight. The good news is that we are living in the very best time in all of human history. The stock markets may be going up and down. The American stock market is simply overpriced. You know, the stocks are too high, because during the 90s everybody went crazy. And now they're still a little crazy. And the prices will have to come down until they stop being crazy. A stock is merely an investment to get a return. That's all it is. And the returns aren't there. So the stocks have lower value. And when the stocks go down to the level of the return, it will stabilize and life will go on. But the good news is that we have no major wars. Most of the major diseases have been solved, have been cured, and that we have entered into basically a free market world. And Singapore is perfectly positioned to be one of the most prosperous nations for as far as we can see for 100 years. And the opportunities for you have never been greater in all of human history than now, except for tomorrow and next year and the year after. I have lived and worked and traveled in almost 90 countries. And I can tell you there's a lot of crummy countries out there. There's a lot of countries that you only want to go to once, or you want to get through quickly. And 100 years from now, they will still be poor. But Singapore will be more prosperous and more prosperous and more prosperous. So your job is to participate fully in the prosperity of the future, right? How many people here would like to double their income? If I could show you how to double your income, will you give it a try? Now, I've studied this subject for my entire life. I have trained over 2 million people, and I have created probably thousands of people who've gone from absolutely nothing to becoming millionaires, including in Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Laos, not Laos, but Indonesia, I'm sorry about Indonesia, the Philippines, Hong Kong, much of Latin America. My programs are distributed in 20 languages in 35 countries, and tens of thousands of people have been through the programs, and many have dramatically changed their lives with the tools and the ideas that I'm going to give to you. Now, we have 3 hours together, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the very best ideas that I know, and I'm going to condense them into our 3 hours, okay? And I'm going to give you, in the first half, I'm going to talk about what I call the psychology of success. We can call it the psychology of selling, because it's the psychology or the mental way of achieving anything. In the second half, I'm going to show you how to apply this specifically to how to sell more, how to double your sales, how to double your income, and so on, okay? Is that a good deal? Say yes. In the middle, we'll have a break. All right? Okay. Now, I started off my life poorly. I did not graduate from high school. I finished in the half of the class that made the top half possible. I couldn't get any kind of a job, so I worked at laboring jobs. My first job was washing dishes in the back of a hotel, small hotel. And then I went to washing cars with a car lot. And then I went to washing floors with a janitorial service. I thought washing was in my future, but it was sort of downhill, washing. And then I worked as a construction laborer. And then I worked on farms, and I worked on ranches, and I worked on a ship in the North Atlantic. And I worked at laboring jobs until I was about 22, 23. And how many people here are in sales? Well, when I couldn't get a job, laboring job, I got into sales too, just like you. So I know where you're coming from. And actually, I started my sales career here in Southeast Asia. I used to sell here on the streets of Singapore. I used to work traveling from city to city around Southeast Asia selling. So I know what it's like to sell here in Singapore on these streets in the summertime when it's hot. It's hot, hotter, and hotter still. It's never cool. You pray for rain, all right? I know what it's like. I used to be drenched, and that's before you got out of the house, you know. So I went and I worked very hard. I wasn't afraid to work because I'd worked as a laborer. And so I was told that if you just see enough people, talk to enough people, you'll make sales. So I used to run from place to place so I could be rejected more often. And I wasn't making any sales. And all I knew to do was to see as many people as possible and talk as much as possible. So it was run, talk, talk. Run, talk, talk, and then no. And I used to run from place to place, and I would talk as much as possible, and people would say no. I didn't mind if they looked at their watches, but it's when they looked at their watches and started hitting their watches like So finally I did something which changed my life, and it brings us to being together tonight. I went and asked a top salesman, I said, what are you doing differently from me? How come you're making so many sales? He's selling the same product. He's selling it out of the same office. He's selling to the same people. He's selling it at the same price. And he's selling 5 times and 10 times as much as me. And I didn't know much about selling at that time. And he said, well, show me your presentation. And I said, my what? Your sales presentation. I said, you show me yours and I'll show you mine. And so he said, well, a presentation is a logical and orderly method of separating prospects from suspects, identifying their needs, making a presentation, asking their questions, and getting them to take action. I couldn't believe it. It's like I had been pushing a telephone, trying to get through, and I was just pushing numbers randomly, and nobody was answering. All right? I wasn't getting through, and he told me there's a logical sequence to selling, which we'll talk about in a little while. Well, instead of talking all the time, I went out and I began asking questions, and people responded to me differently. And then I began to craft and design questions, and people responded to me differently, and I started to make sales. And then I asked him other questions. Well, what do you say when someone says this? And how do you deal with this objection? And how do you get them to take action when they want to think it over? And, well, all the answers have been found. All the answers to all our questions have been found, and I took answers from him, and I began to ask other people, and then I began to read books on selling. I didn't know there were any books on selling. You know there's over 4,000 books on selling? There's 2 books on selling published every week, 2 main books and probably 5 other books. And you know that most salespeople have never read a book on selling? I couldn't believe it. I went down to the bookstore and there were books on selling. So I began to buy them, and I would get up every morning and I would read for an hour in selling, and I'd take notes and I'd think of how I could use this, and I'd go out and I'd try it out that day. And that night I'd review how did it work. And if it worked well, then I would do more of it. If it didn't work well, I would stop it or modify it, or sometimes I'd combine this idea with one idea and I had something that worked even better. And then I began to listen to audio programs on selling. I thought I had died and gone to heaven. I had no idea there was so much good information on audio programs. Do you know how many people who have become rich just listening to audio programs in their car when they drive around or when they walk around? Those days, I didn't have a car, but I had one of those Sony cassette players that you could carry around your neck like a purse, and it had a little earphone. And I'd go around like this, listening to it like this. And I'd get up in the morning and I'd play it. And I played it, and I memorized. I spent hours. I memorized the words. Interesting thing, my programs here, this program, Psychology of Selling, is the best-selling audio program on sales in the world. More people have become millionaires listening to it than any other program, according to some of the studies, follow-up studies. People tell me they listen to that program over and over again until they remember all the words. And then when they're with a customer, when the customer says something, the words just fall up. And they tell me, I made the sale because I remembered the words. The words had been stored away. They're part of your thinking. Just like your language. You speak a language, you don't have to grasp for a word because the word's programmed in. The correct answers are programmed in. Well, I listened to programs, this is long before I ever produced my own programs, and I remembered the words, and my sales went up and up and up, and my sales kept going up, and soon I began to go to seminars and courses. I began to travel great distances to go to seminars and sit in front and learn from other people and practice what they learned. Now let me give you an interesting point. Successful people have been studied at great length for many years, and their behaviors have been observed. What do successful people do that's different from other people? One of the things that we find is that successful people, all of them, are very action-oriented. In other words, if they get an idea, they move quickly on it. If they learn something new, they try it out. Now people say, well, what if it doesn't work? Well, if it doesn't work, find out quickly. There's a rule, there's try quickly and fail fast. Because the only two things can happen if you take action on a new idea. What are they? What are the two things? It's not a trick question. I'll tell you if it's a trick question. It's not a trick question. Well, it can work, and if it works, it tells you do more of that. Or if it doesn't work, it gives you feedback, and you either stop doing it or you modify it until it does work. But the wonderful thing is that you can't lose by trying something new. So if you were to take successful people, and there's many studies that have been done on this, if you could only look at them through a window and look at a group of people, look through the window, you could tell who the successful people are because they're always in motion. They're always trying more things. They're always active. Unsuccessful people are always waiting for everything to be just right. It's like waiting for a bus on a street where no buses go. They're still waiting. Where's the bus? The bus never comes. Successful people are always taking action. So if all you do is just take more action, just get busier, you'll be more successful. By the way, I'm not going to talk about it today, but does everybody here want to be lucky? Would you like to be lucky? Say yes. Okay. You know, that's a very, very important part of Chinese culture is luck, good fortune. Isn't that true? That's why we like jade. Why do we like jade? Because jade signifies luck. Okay. Now, I studied this for many years, and what I found is that it's not luck, it's what we call the law of probabilities. The law of probability says that if you flip a coin, the probabilities are 50% it will come down heads or tails, okay? The law of probability says that if you drive home, there's a certain probability that everything will happen. If you drive home, there's a very high probability you'll be safe, but there's a small probability you'll have an accident. In life, when you get married, there's a probability you'll be successful and happy. There's a probability that you won't. All life insurance, all insurance is based on probabilities. It's based on statistics, okay? So, how do you make your own luck? The way you make your own luck is you try more things. It's very simple. It's like life is a great game of darts, okay? Now, if you only throw one dart at the board, your chances of hitting a bullseye are very, very small because of the law of probabilities. But if you throw dart after dart after dart after dart after dart at the board, what must you eventually do? First of all, even if you're an idiot, you'll eventually hit the board. And if you keep throwing darts, and you keep throwing darts one after another, even if you're an idiot, you will sooner or later hit a bullseye. Isn't that true? So you look at successful people, and one of the things we find about successful people is that they're just average people who try more things. They just try more things. They're more active. They make more calls. In selling, we make more calls. And in life, we just try more things. Now, here's an interesting thing. If you throw darts, how many times will you miss the bullseye? Most of the time. Most of the things you try won't work. The fact is that successful people fail far more than unsuccessful people. In other words, if you throw lots of darts, you're going to miss most of the time. But you don't focus on the misses. As a matter of fact, here's a rule. If you could throw 10 darts and be absolutely guaranteed that 9 would fail, try 9 different things in life, make 9 calls, and be absolutely guaranteed that 9 out of 10 calls that you make, 90%, would fail completely, but 1 would be a big hit. If you could be guaranteed of a 90% failure rate with a 1% success rate, what would that mean? It means you'd be one of the most successful people alive. Isn't that true? Because then all you have to do is say, whoa, let's start, because, in other words, increase the probabilities. And then people say, boy, you're sure lucky. No, I'm not lucky. I just saw more people. I just tried more things. Now, every time you learn something new, it's like throwing another dart. Every time you read a book, listen to a tape, come to a course like this, it's like adding more darts to your bag, so you have more darts to throw. And so an average person who's got more darts to throw will be more successful than a genius who's got very few darts to throw. So it's really important. Well, and I'm getting off the track, but you can make your own luck by simply throwing more darts, by trying more things, by doing what you're doing tonight, by coming here. And my job is to give you a whole bunch of darts, okay? Because the law is that if you try enough things, you will be a big success. If you try enough things, because human beings are learning organisms. In other words, we're always learning from our experiences. We're learning at a conscious level and even at an unconscious level. But you cannot help but learn. You're just learning all the time. So even if you're trying things and you're failing, you're still learning at a very fast rate. In fact, you learn more and faster from failure than from anything else. Nobody really learns much from success. But from failure, you get real smart. Like burning your hand. You learn very fast. Okay, there's a story I have to tell you. It's up in Montana, in California, in the United States. In Montana, they raise a lot of sheep in Montana. And this fellow has a sheep ranch that he got from his father. And the city starts to expand out, and they buy out his sheep ranch to build houses. So he sells the land, and he makes a big profit. And he decides that he'll go down to Los Angeles, which is a long way. It's like going from here to Bangkok. He'll go down to Los Angeles. He'll go to the big city. He's never been to the big city before in his whole life, but he wants to go to the big city and see it now that he has all this money. He's always been on this farm raising sheep. Well, he buys a plane ticket, gets onto the plane, he's sitting there, and he's sitting next to a businessman. The businessman's working away. He's got a computer working away, and he feels a little bit awkward because he's just a farm boy. And this businessman's working away, and he's kind of crossing his legs like this, and he crosses his legs, and he notices there's 2 sheep turds in his cuff. And he goes, and he reaches down, and he picks them up. He's got them in his hand like this. And he doesn't know what to do. He feels kind of embarrassed, and he's looking around, and the businessman says, "What do you got?" He says, "What?" He said, "What do you got in your hand?" He said, "Nothing." He said, "Come on, what do you got?" He said, "Well, they're pills." He said, "Well, what kind of pills are they?" He said, "Well, they're smarten up pills." He said, "Smarten up pills." He said, "Yes, I'm going to Los Angeles for a big business meeting, and I always take a couple of smarten up pills with me, so I'm really smart when I go to my meeting." The guy says, "Well, I'm going to a big meeting, and I need something like that too. Give me one of those pills." And he said, "Well, I don't think you'd like it." He said, No, come on, you got 2 of them. Give me one. I really need it. I've got a big meeting coming up." He said, "Well, all right." So he gives him one, about this big. The guy takes it and goes, he said, "That tastes like a sheep turd." He said, "See, you're getting smarter already." Well, our goal today is for you to get smarter throughout the day. Anyway, so I began asking these questions. Why are some people more successful than others? And let me make sure we get this okay. And what I learned was the law of cause and effect. Now, the law of cause and effect is the great law of life. It basically says that there's a reason for everything. Everything happens for a reason. That success is not an accident. Failure is not an accident. If you want to be successful, happy, financially independent, if you want to achieve all your goals, it's not luck. It's not an accident. What you do is you find someone else who at one time did not have the effect that you want. You decide what you want. You find someone else who didn't have it, and you find out what they did to get it, and you do it over and over again until you get the same result. And it's not an accident. Well, when I learned this, it changed my life. You mean if I do what other successful people do, I'll get the same results that other successful people get? The answer is yes. You mean if I find out what top salespeople do, and I do the same thing until I master it, I'll get the same results as top salespeople? I'll make the same money? I'll have the same cars? Yes. So I went out and I did it, and it worked. I couldn't believe it. And I'm not as good a salesperson as many people here. Many people here are better salespeople than me. But I learned the cause and effect relationships. I learned that selling is like cooking. There's recipes for selling. There's formulas. And if you follow them, and by the way, they've spent $20-30 million in the last few years videotaping 55,000 sales calls and watching the calls and reviewing the videotapes and having people sit in the back taking notes. And they interviewed the salespeople before the sales call and afterwards, and they interviewed the customers before the sales call and afterwards. And if the customer decided to buy, they asked them, and they played the video, at what point did you decide to buy? If the customer decided not to buy, they asked, why did you decide not to buy? And they did this with 55,000 calls, and they began to draw cross correlations, and they found that every sale follows an exact process. And it follows an exact process in the customer's mind. and that if you sell the way the customers buy, you'll sell 5 and 10 times as much as you sell today. The reason that we don't sell is because we sell differently from the way the customer buys. It's the same as if I was to speak to you in German, or you were to speak to me in Chinese. I mean, it would be like using a different language that we don't understand. So what I found was that if you do what other successful salespeople do, based on the exhaustive research, your sales go up. And I tried it, and sales went up. And you could take people, I took people off the street who'd never sold anything in their lives, and I said, here's the system. And these are sometimes the very best salespeople of all, because they don't have any ideas or fixed ideas. So I said, just do it this way. Say these words, do it this way, say these words, do it this way. And they did, and their sales went like that. And they went past people who'd been selling for 5 and 10 years. I cannot tell you how many young people, guys out of school, women out of school, just starting in sales, never sold before, began to use these methods and became superstars in their fields. Because they didn't have any old ideas about the way things were supposed to be done. They just said, okay, they just did it that way. And their sales, and people said, well, you're just lucky. You're just lucky. You just got into it at the right time. I had a woman in my course who was really neat. She came to me a year and a half later. She came back to the seminar I was at. She said, you're not going to believe it. I was in your seminar 18 months ago, and I had just started in real estate, and you said to set goals for how much you want to earn. So I set a goal to make $100,000 in the next year. Well, I didn't know that the average first-year earning for a real estate person was $18,000. Nobody told me that. So I set a goal of $100,000. Then I just did what you said to do, and I made $104,000 in my first year and became number one in the company. And they said, how did you do that? I said, well, do what? Make so much money. Well, is that a lot of money? She didn't know that was a lot of money for a first year. She had just written it down, and then she just did what other successful people did. So the law of cause and effect is what changed my life. And by the way, I've been in many different businesses now. I've consulted for more than 500 companies over the years, over the last 20 years. And in every case, I ask them, how does your business work? What are the cause and effect relationships? And where's it strong? Where's it weak? What's working? What's not working? Where are the places where we can gain advantage? Where are the places where we're losing money, and so on? And they think it's miraculous when I come in with this advice, which I charge them a lot of money for. Okay, so what I learned was this, is that there is a mental application. By the way, of all physical laws, there's mental applications. This is more important than anything else. It's that thoughts are causes. Thoughts are causes, and conditions are effects. Thoughts are causes. Thoughts are causes, and conditions are effects. That means your thoughts create the effects of your life. Is that your thought is creative. You're almost like a magician in your own life. You create your world by the way you think. And the interesting thing is, it's not the way you thought yesterday or the way you might think tomorrow. It's the way you think at this minute, at this moment. It's the way you think in the now that determines your life. And your thoughts are constantly creating your world on a forward basis. The wonderful thing about our society, a free society like Singapore, is that at any given time you can draw a line under the past and you can say, that was the past, but this is how I'm going to think in the future. And your whole life, just like turning the wheel of a car, goes in a different direction. If you change your thinking, you change your life. And when I learned this, you mean your outer world merely reflects your thoughts? Your outer world is merely an image of your inner world? Is that you keep attracting into your life people and circumstances in harmony with your thinking? Is that everything you have in your life you've created by the way you think? And that if you don't like anything, you can change the way you think and attract something different? Yes. All of that's possible. And once you learn that, you realize there's only one thing in the universe over which you have complete control. What is that? You only control one thing in the world. What is it? You can control your thinking. You can't control other things. You can't control the traffic, and you certainly can't control the weather, but you can control your thinking. And that's enough. Because if you will control your thinking, you control the whole world. Singapore is a tribute to human thinking. Singapore is merely an external expression of the very best thinking that has gone into building this country. This country is based on mind power. It's the most amazing thing. Look at these beautiful hotels and convention centers and office buildings. I mean, these are mental. These were mental before they were physical. Are you with me so far? It's really important to understand that. It's kind of an overwhelming thought. I had a hard time with it when I was in my early 20s. You mean my life, which was not that great, has been created by myself? Yes, it's been created by myself. So I said, well, then I'm going to start to get my thinking in harmony with what I want, rather than keep thinking the old crummy thoughts. Right, so thoughts are causes, conditions are effects. Now what this means And it brings us to the great law, which is the foundation of all religion and all philosophy, is that you become what you think about most of the time. You become what you think about most of the time. This is the underlying principle of all religions, all philosophy, all psychology, all success, all metaphysics. Everything is you become what you think about most of the time. So the question is, what do you think about most of the time? By the way, this law is always true, except there are a couple of exceptions. If there weren't exceptions, then every young man would turn into a young woman by the age of 20. But nonetheless, you do become what you think about most of the time. Now, by the way, one of my subjects when I was poor is I began to study self-made millionaires. Self-made millionaires are people who start with zero and within one working lifetime pass the $1 million mark. Now, it's a little bit easier in Singapore. Maybe it's a little harder. But we're talking about U.S. dollars. But the way your currency is going, they're going to be the same pretty soon, isn't it? I remember the old days. I remember the old exchange rate. But here's the point. Is I studied self-made millionaires. These are people who started with nothing. They started with no money and maybe limited education. Sometimes they were brand new immigrants. Sometimes they couldn't speak the language, and they made more than $1 million. So tens of thousands of them have been studied over the years to find out what they do differently. And wouldn't that be a good thing to know, by the way? Say yes. I mean, if you want to be a self-made millionaire, I can promise you this. If you don't know how they think, you can't make it. In other words, if you want to go somewhere but you don't have a map, you can't get there. So I began to study them, and I found, what do you think self-made millionaires think about most of the time? They think about becoming financially independent. Because financial independence to them is very important. They want to reach the point where they don't have to worry about money. After that, they will spend. What do you think poor people think about all the time? They think about how little money they have and think about spending everything they have. And everything they can borrow or put on credit cards. So self-made millionaires are always thinking in terms of financial independence. Poor people are always thinking about how poor they are. Now, if you want to become a self-made millionaire, starting point is begin thinking about financial independence. And I'll talk about this in just a second. So, go back to my question. What is it that successful people think about most of the time? Come on, this is real simple, but it's really important. What is it they think about most of the time? Success. You're right. They think about what they want most of the time and how to get it. Now, these are the two turning points in your life. Think about what you want and how to get it. What is it that you really, really want, and how do you get it? And that's what they think about most of the time. And if you think about what you want most of the time, you start to move toward it, and it starts to move toward you. If you think about how you can get it and what you can do to move faster toward it, you begin to see all kinds of ideas. You all know these things about the brain, but the fact is, if you plant an idea in your brain, you suddenly start to see all kinds of possibilities to achieve the idea. Successful people are successful because they think and talk about what they want. Unsuccessful people are unhappy because they think and talk about what they don't want. They think and talk about the people they're mad at and their bad experiences and their bad luck and their bad job and just shut up. They whine and cry about their situation, but successful people are thinking about what they want and how to get it most of the time. Now, in a University of Pennsylvania study, they put together millions and millions of dollars, and over a 22-year period, they studied 350,000 salespeople all over the country. And they interviewed them to find out what they thought about most of the time and how they thought about things most of the time. Now, this is a very important point, by the way. It's what you think about, the thought itself, multiplied times the emotion, how you think about it, equals the result. Here's an important point. If you think about money, but you think that people who have money are no good, you'll always be poor. One of the things I tell people is never criticize successful people. When people have a lot of money, don't say, well, yeah, I'd rather be happy than rich. Well, I've got news for you. The rich are very happy. People don't realize it, it's a little thing. It's very common in society, in all societies, to criticize successful people, to try to pull them down. But I've got some news for you. It doesn't hurt them at all if you criticize them. But it ruins, it destroys all your hopes for success. When you criticize successful people, you drive success out of your life. You develop a negative force field of energy around yourself that repels success experiences. You actually shoot yourself in your own foot, bang, and go around telling everybody what a good shot you are. So don't ever criticize successful people. Admire successful people. Look up to successful people. Are successful people perfect? No. Are you perfect? No. So therefore, don't expect successful people to be perfect. Just look at what they've done to be successful, and if there's something you can learn it. Read their books, listen to their tapes, go to their courses, but don't ever get into conversations criticizing people just because they're successful. Because it hurts you. It doesn't hurt them at all. It destroys your possibilities. And as you know, in society, it becomes very common that people who are successful are pulled down and attacked and so on. Stay away from that, because that's how losers think. And so the emotion is the critical thing. Well, they interviewed 350,000 salespeople, and they tracked them over a series of years. What is your name, sir? Walden? Okay. So they say, let's say, Walden, would you join this experiment with us? What we're going to do is we're going to phone you on an irregular basis. Every few days, somebody will phone you, and they'll just ask you, what are you thinking about right now? And whatever it is, just tell them what you're thinking about at that moment, okay? So they would do this experiment with all of us. They hire university students to do this. They give them free beer and pizza, for which university students will do anything, okay? And then what they would do is they would just phone Walden, and every so often, someone would say, Walden, that fellow's on the phone for you. Okay, tell him I'm thinking about this proposal for a customer, or I'm thinking about getting this sale closed by the end of the week, or I'm thinking about this course that I'm going to. So Walden would just tell what he's thinking about, and then they tracked that over a period of months and years, and then compared income. And they found an interesting thing. A pattern began to emerge. Is the highest paid salespeople had a particular thinking pattern that was different from the lowest paid salespeople. And they found that it was consistent. Now, they found there was one quality that top salespeople have more than any other single quality. It's the highest quality of all, and it was kind of predictive of success. It actually predicts success in life more than any other single thinking quality. Can you guess what it is? Go ahead. Can't be wrong. Don't worry. Don't be shy. Can you guess what's the most important quality to predict success and happiness in life? Belief is good. That's part of it. There's no wrong answers. I'll tell you what the answer is, okay? It's optimism. What they found was that successful people had really high levels of optimism. They were really optimistic. They were positive most of the time. Does that mean they didn't have problems? Oh, they had far more problems than the average person because they tried more things. They found that optimists had two great qualities that made them great in selling, which led to their success. Number one was they tried more things. They made more calls because they had an unrealistic expectation that they would be successful. They just kind of believed they would be successful. You said believe? Yeah, they believed if they just kept on, they would be successful. So they just tried more things. Now, the second quality they had is they persisted more. Because they have an unrealistic expectation that if they just persist more, they'll succeed. Do you know that the average sale today is closed after 6 visits with a customer? 5.8 to 6 visits. That's how long it takes to make a sale today. But once you've made the sale, sometimes you can keep that customer for years. And every subsequent sale takes you 1/10 of the time of the first sale. Is that all highly paid salespeople have persisted until they got the sale, and then they keep that customer year after year after year, and they make more and more sales, and they get referrals from that customer? Are you with me so far? So therefore, optimists try more things, they make more calls, and they persist longer, and gradually they begin to build up their sales, they begin to build up their customer base, and years go by, and they're 5 and 10 times as successful as people who make fewer calls and quit earlier. Are you with me so far? So this is pretty logical stuff. You think, well, obviously, if a person is positive and they make lots of calls and they call back, they're probably going to make more sales than a person who doesn't, right? In other words, they're creating their own luck. They're putting the law of probabilities on their side. So optimists make more calls and try more often, or call back more often. But we also find that optimists have a particular way of thinking in several different areas, and that's what I want to talk about between now and the break. I can spend a whole day on this, but I know that you guys are really smart, so you could take a lot of good ideas in a short period of time. Is that right? Say yes. Okay. So what optimists do... Oh, damn, I love this stuff. Okay. What optimists do... What time do we start? We start at 7, 8, 9, 10, 10. Okay. What optimists have is what I call orientations. Now, an orientation is a particular way of thinking about life and the world. And the first orientation that optimists have is future orientation. Now, future orientation is what made Singapore a great nation state. Future orientation means that optimists idealize. Optimists think about the future most of the time. They think about where they're going most of the time. They think about the possibilities of the future, and they idealize. They kind of imagine, what would my future look like if it was fantastic? What would the world look like? What would my world look like? And there's 4 areas where optimists idealize. These are the 4 things that we all want in common. All over the world, all human beings want these 4 things. Number 1 is great health. We want to have great health. We want to feel good about ourselves. We want to have high levels of energy. We want to live forever, right? And it's never been possible to live longer and live better than it is today, right here. Number 2 is that optimists want to have loving relationships. They want to have happy relationships. They want to have happy families. They want to have happy friends. They want to have work with people they like, work for bosses they like. They want to sell to customers they like, and so on. One of the great rules for success in selling is only get into a business where you really like the people you're working with and you really like the people you sell to. I had a woman come up to me recently. She said, I really like my product and I really like my company, but I really hate the people I sell it to. I mean, they're real jerks. She just didn't like the people. I said, you'll never be successful unless you really care about the people you're selling to. Well, the third thing that we all want is we all want to do meaningful work, and we all want to do it well. It's so important for us to do our work well, because this is what we found, is how much you like yourself, your level of self-esteem, determines your level of optimism. If you really like yourself, if you really feel happy about yourself, you'll do your work better. But the flip side is also true. It's like a coin. If you do your work well, you like yourself more. And if you like yourself more, you do your work better. And each time you learn something new that enables you to do your work better, you like yourself more. And then when you do your work better, you get better rewards and better feedback, and you like yourself more. And the more you like yourself, the better you do. And the better you do, the more you like yourself. Say, I like myself. Now say it like you mean it. Say, I like myself. I like myself. Wonderful. All top people can say that quite happily. They did a study of 1,500 men and women who were at the tops of every one of their fields. It was a 9-year study. And they asked them, what is the greatest of all benefits of success? And you know what they said? It was wonderful feelings of self-esteem. They liked themselves. They liked themselves. They genuinely liked themselves and felt that they had done something important with their lives. Felt they had done something worthwhile with their lives. So therefore, a high level of self-esteem leads to self-confidence. It leads to optimism. It leads to a positive mental attitude. And the more you like yourself, the more you like other people. And the more you like other people, the more they like you and they want to buy from you and recommend you to their friends. So everything you do to build yourself up psychologically improves every part of your life. The more you like yourself, the better a parent you are, the better a spouse you are, the better a friend you are, the better a boss you are. The more you like yourself, the better is every part of your life. The more you like yourself, the lower your stress levels. The more you like yourself, the stronger is your immune system. The more you like yourself, the healthier you are. People with high self-esteem are very seldom sick. People with high self-esteem do their work well. They have lots of energy. People with high self-esteem set big goals for themselves. It's an interesting thing. If you really like yourself, you set big goals for yourself. And if you set big goals for yourself, and you also persist. So the more you like yourself, the better you do. And the wonderful thing is every single time that you do something positive for yourself or for anyone else, your self-esteem goes up. Now, this brings us back to future orientation. People who really like themselves think about the future, and they have great ideas for the future. Do you know that we have found that just the very idea... I'm sorry, let me not get ahead of myself. I said there's 4 things we want. Number 1 is health and energy. Number 2 is loving relationships. Number 3 is meaningful work that we do well. Number 4 is financial independence. We all want to be financially independent. Now, we all judge ourselves in life by how well we're doing on each of these 4. And we could be doing well in 3, but if we're low in 4, that's what bothers us. That's the thing that worries us more than anything else. You could have great health and good family and nice job and be broke. And you know what? You won't think about the other 3 things. You think about being broke all the time. Isn't that true? It's called the deficiency need in psychology. We always tend to think about where our deficiencies are and not pay enough attention to the other. Well, the more you like yourself, the more you idealize your future, the more you create great dreams of what is possible for you. And the starting point of of dreaming great dreams is to have a fantasy or an imaginary idea of your life as if it were perfect sometime in the future. So when I do personal strategic planning, when I do strategic planning actually with corporations, the first thing I say is, let us imagine that this company, 5 years in the future, is perfect in every way. Okay? If this company was perfect, if it was a great company, if it was the most respected company in the business, if it was the best company of all in this industry, what would it look like? And then I go around and I have the executives give me an idea. What would it look like? Best products, best service, great customers, tremendous management, wonderful people, great systems internally, wonderful reputation, high profitability, rapid growth rates, high price on the stock. We write them all down. And the most amazing thing is, I say, okay, now, is this what the company would look like if it was perfect? And everybody says, yeah, if this company was perfect, that's what it would look like. I would say, okay, is this possible? Are these possible? And you know, everybody stops. I do this with the senior executives of multi-billion-dollar corporations. And they say, yeah, 5 years? Not in 1 year, but we could do that in 5 years. And so the only question then becomes what? How? How will we do it? I say, good. Now let's start talking about how. Let's first of all organize these in priority. If we could only accomplish one, which would be the first one? And then which would be the second? And so the first one, you know what the first one is usually? Superb products and services. Because if you have that, you'll have the sales, you'll have the profits, you'll have the market, you'll attract the people and so on. So, okay, now, how do we develop a reputation as being the best in the business? There's a reason that I talked about this, because you need to say the same thing. If your life was perfect in 5 years, if your health was perfect and your family was perfect and your work was perfect and your financial situation was perfect in 5 years, what would it look like? What would it look like? And then you begin to think, hey, in 1 year maybe, but in 5 years, I could be fit, I could have a great family, I could be the top of my field in my work, I could be financially independent or on my way to financial independence. All that's possible within 5 years. Isn't that true? Now, here's an interesting point. Are you ready? The time is going to pass anyway. The 5 years is going to go past anyway. You know, 5 years from now, 5 years will have gone by. You'll be 5 years older. The only question is, what are you going to do in the meantime? Well, here's my favorite word in success. My favorite word in success is the word clarity. I am a fanatic on the word clarity. And basically, what I say is you can't hit a target that you can't see. So your job is to be absolutely clear if your life was perfect. If you're married, sit down with your spouse and create what is called a dream list. And just say, these are our dreams for the future. And just write down everything you'd like to have in your life if you had no limits. If you had the power to achieve anything. If you could wave a magic wand over your life and have 3 wishes, what 3 wishes would you want? Health, happiness, money, financial independence. Here's the point. If you could dream it, you can do it. If you can write it down, if you can imagine it and write it down, then the only question you ask is, how? You say, how do we do it? And then what you do is you say, now who else has got what I want? And who else at one time didn't have it and now they have it? And what you do is you go and find out how they got there. You read their books, you ask them questions, you listen to their programs, and then you discipline yourself to do the same things they did until you get the same result. It's not a miracle. Success is not, there's just far too many successful people in Singapore who started with nothing for it to be luck or an accident or a miracle. There's a system going on here. Like somebody's got the phone number and they're getting through on a regular basis. Your job is to find out the phone number. My daughter is going out with a young man, and his father is a lawyer. The lawyer is a corporate lawyer, and they set up they did all the papers for a restaurant. And the founder of this restaurant was very arrogant. He said, this is going to be the best restaurant in Los Angeles. This restaurant is going to be so good, we're not going to advertise this restaurant, and we're not even going to have the phone number in the book. In fact, this restaurant is going to be so good that people are going to keep the phone number. And the only way that you can get a reservation is if you know the phone number. And so you'll have to know somebody who knows the phone number. And you know something? Within 1 year, that restaurant was packed. And you could only get a reservation if you had the phone number. And so you'd be saying, do you know the phone number to that restaurant? Well, yes, I do. Could I have it? Well, I'm not sure. And so people who had the phone number were very jealous about this phone number, and they were very careful giving out the phone number, and they went there on a regular basis. I mean, he made it one of the most successful restaurants in Los Angeles. To this day, you can't get in unless you know the phone number. Now, when we talk about being financially successful, scoring a 10 in all 4 of those areas, you've got to figure out the phone number. You've got to get the phone number. Now, fortunately enough, the phone number is not a secret, as like this one was. The phone number is all around you. The phone number is here tonight, but the phone number is all around you. Your job is to get the phone number. So clarity is the critical thing. Decide what you want. Decide clearly what you want. Talk about it. Think about it. Imagine it. Play with it. Like a child at Christmas time. Fantasize about a beautiful home, a beautiful car, travel, health, so on. All of these things are possible for you, but you have to have them in your mind first. Remember, it always begins within your mind and then it goes into your reality. Now, the second part is... I love this stuff. Okay. The second orientation that successful people have is goal orientation. Now, goal orientation means that they have very clear written goals that they work on every single day. So I'm going to give you a homework exercise. If we had more time, I would go take you through the exercise here. We may do this at a later seminar, but what I want you to do is I want you to take a piece of paper like this when you get home tonight. I want you to promise me you'll do this. If you'll do this, I promise you it will have a major impact on your life. No exceptions. Take a piece of paper like this, write the word goals at the top, and write down at least 10 goals you want to accomplish in the next 12 months. Before you go to bed tonight, this is your homework assignment. Go home, sit down, write down the 10 goals. You promise me you'll do that? Say yes. Even if you're lying, some of you would say like this. I'm not saying anything. I ain't writing no goals. Might work. You know, it might get me out of my rotten old broken down car, my crummy job. I ain't writing down no goals. It might take 3 minutes of my life. I'm not doing it. Now here's the important point. Writing down these goals takes 2 to 3 minutes. Actually about 3. If you write down 10 things that you want to accomplish in the next 12 months. Now all you have to do then is take this piece of paper, fold it up, put it away somewhere where you won't see it for a whole year. You know, like in your Bible or something like that. Take it, put it away for a whole year, and at the end of the year you take out this list and open it up, and you'll be both happy and sad. You'll be happy because 8 of your 10 goals will have been accomplished in the most amazing ways. And you'll be sad because you'll wish you had written more goals and bigger goals. Now, does this work? Yes, it works everywhere. Has anybody ever done this, by the way, written down 10 goals? Anybody ever done it? Does it work? Everybody will tell you it works. People go home and managers go home and they have all the staff sit down and write down 10 goals. Parents go home and have their kids write down 10 goals or have their spouse write down 10 goals and their whole lives change. Now, it's not that it takes at the end of 12 months suddenly, bing, you achieve the goals. Is the goals start to come true at a rate that is absolutely amazing. People come to me and they say, my whole life has changed in the last 30 days. All kinds of things have happened. They've changed jobs. They've changed relationships. They've gotten a new house. They bought a car. They've taken a trip. And they're all things they wrote down. So, your homework assignment is to write down 10 goals. And you can write down more if you like. Before I came over here, I'm staying at the hotel across, I wrote down my 10 goals. I do it every single day. I just write them and rewrite them. I carry a school notebook, a spiral notebook with me, and I just write down my goals every day. Because that just burns them deeper and deeper and deeper into my subconscious mind. And it's the most amazing thing. It costs you 3 to 5 minutes a day, but the power on your life is phenomenal. If all you'll do from this day is you write down 10 goals, and then instead of putting them away for a year, just review them on a regular basis. And the only question you ask is what? How? How can I achieve the goals? How? The question how makes you an optimist. The question how raises your self-esteem. The question how unlocks your creativity. The question how makes you powerful. When you look at your goals and say, okay, I can have these. I can have more money, better health, greater travel. I can do all these things. Good. The only question is how. But here's the interesting thing, is that even if you didn't do these things, I had a man come up to me at a seminar recently, And he said, Brian, he said, I was at your seminar 6 months ago. He said, you gave that exercise about writing the 10 goals, and while you were talking, I was so excited, I wrote down 18 goals. And then I took the list home, I did what you told me, and I hid it. He said, I hid it so well, I couldn't find it again. Now, he said, the interesting thing was, I took the list from the seminar, I folded it up, took it home, and hid it. I didn't even look at it again. 2 weeks later, I moved to a new house. And when I was unpacking, I found the list. And I opened the list. And he said, I had to sit down to read it. He said, 11 of the 18 goals had been achieved in 5.5 months. One was to get a better job, which I had. One was to earn more money. I'm making more than I ever made. One was to get a new car. The new car came with the job. One was to get a new house. I just moved into the house because I could afford it. One was to lose weight. One was to take a trip. One was to learn a subject. One was to fix a relationship. But he said these were life goals, and I'd accomplished 11, and I'd almost accomplished 4 more. He said, in less than 6 months. And I lost the list. See, the interesting thing is when you write down the goals, writing a goal down actually programs it into your subconscious mind. So even if your conscious mind doesn't even remember the list, your subconscious mind's got it now, and it works 24 hours a day to bring it into your life. Please trust me on this. It's life transforming. And I've spoken all over the world and given this exercise. I've never had anybody say it didn't work. The only things they say are, it was incredible. The results on their lives were explosive. They could not believe it. So, will you give it a try? Say yes. Okay, I'm trusting you. I'm coming over to your house tonight. I'm going to wake up. You're going to hear that banging on the door. Bang, bang, bang. Show me the list. No list? We'll have to have a talk. Okay, so goal orientation. Now, the third orientation is excellence orientation. In order to achieve something you have never achieved before, you have to be good at something you've never been good at before. You have to develop skills you've never had before. So remember, your job, and I've got some good news and more good news. When you come into this room, you are automatically in the top 10% of people in our society. You're in the top 10% of adults, and I'll tell you why. Only 10% of people ever come to a seminar like this. Now, the 10% of people who come to a seminar like this are automatically optimists. Nobody came here hoping this would be a bad seminar. If you did, I'll talk to you later. You're future-oriented because you came here to learn something that will help you to be better in the future. Even if you didn't define it that way, nonetheless, in your own heart, you were future-oriented. And that's all that matters. You're goal-oriented because you came here. You had to pay for this seminar. You had to turn off the television. You had to make your way down here, find a parking space, get in here. You're goal-oriented. You're aiming for a target, which means that you're already not in just the top 10%, probably in the top 3% of our population in terms of the future. Now remember, here's one of the great rules for success. It doesn't matter where you're coming from. All that really matters is where you're going. It doesn't matter where you're coming from. All that matters is where you're going. Now, your job is, now that you're in the top 10% mentally, and you've got to get there mentally before you get there financially, once you're there mentally, your job is to stay there. Now, this idea of being in the top 10% is a major idea, and let me explain it. When I was growing up, I never thought I could be in the top 10% of anything. I failed in school. I did poorly in school. I got fired from jobs. Try getting fired. I used to pump gas in a gas station. I got fired from that because I wasn't good enough. I got fired from washing dishes. Try getting fired from washing dishes. It doesn't do your self-esteem very much good. I've gotten fired from more jobs than you've had. I mean, it never dawned on me that I could be good at anything. And then I learned something that changed my life. I learned that everybody in the top 10% started where? In the bottom 10%. Everybody who's at the top and doing well was once at the bottom and doing poorly. Everybody who's at the front of the buffet line of life was once at the back of the line. Everybody who's at the top of your field was once not in your field at all. And anything that anyone else has done, you can do as well. It's almost like walking. If I said to you, I will pay you $1 million Singapore dollars if you will walk from here to KL. Physically walk. Now, it doesn't matter how long you take. You can run if you want. But if you will just walk, you cannot take a ride, you have to walk. Now, if I told you, and you believed me, and the $1 million was there, you double-checked, all right? And you get $1 million from walking from here to downtown KL. Is there anybody here who could not do that? Okay. Okay. So we could all do it. Is that correct? Now, is there anybody here who is a runner, a jogger, really fit? Okay? Nobody. Okay. Either that or your arm is too tired from jogging too much. All right. But the point is that with some people who are really fit will get there quickly. They'll do 25, 35 miles a day. Okay? Some people who are not very fit will do 5 or 10 miles a day. Doesn't really matter. Everybody who keeps walking will get there. Are you with me so far? This is an important metaphor. Everybody who keeps walking toward the top 10% gets there. If you keep learning and practicing and trying and reading and listening to audio programs and get associated with other people, if you just keep putting one foot in front of the other, you will get to KL. You will achieve that level of financial income. There's nothing that can stop you except who? Only you can stop you by stopping. And so therefore you find that people who have no advantages at all, but have one, is they just don't stop. They can be a complete idiot. They can have every disadvantage. They can have limited education. They could come from a terrible country with no opportunities. They could have no family and be survivors of a terrible experience, but they just put one foot in front of the other. They get to the front of the line. They get to KL. They get to the top 10%. You can be in the top 10%. So this is what I learned, which changed my life when I was 24 years old and living and passing through Singapore, is that if you make a decision to get into the top 10% and you don't take it back, you will get there. If you'll just do what others have done, you will get there. And it may take a week, it may take a month. Do you know how long it takes to achieve mastery in any profession, including selling? It takes 7 years. Now, many people think, well, I'm going to start in selling, and if I'm not at the top of the field within a month, I'll quit. But it takes 7 years to reach the point where you're in the top 10%. Some people may do it faster, but very seldom. I used to think, hey, I'll do it faster. It took 7 years. It took year after year of working. Now, that doesn't mean that you're broke for 6 years and 11 months and suddenly you make a lot of money. It's a gradual uphill. But the fact is, to get to the point where you're making the kind of money that you're capable of, it will take 7 years. But the time is going to pass anyway. So you might as well be there at the end of the 7 years. Do you know how many people are still here at the end of 7 years? They haven't made any progress because they never put in the extra effort. They never made the decision. They never went for it. So to make a decision, I'm going to be in the top 10%. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to get there. I'm going to pay the price. I'm going to read the books. I'm going to leave the television off. I'm going to start a little earlier. I'm going to work a little harder. I'm going to stay a little later. I'm going to get better. I am going to get into the top 10%. And you know what? There's nothing to stop you from getting to the top 10%. The only reason people don't get into the top 10% is why? They don't decide to. And if they decide to, they don't get started. And if they get started, they quit. All right? So it's very important. But optimists say, hey, I can be in the top 10%. I can be. And they just never quit. They just keep on going. No matter how much criticism they get, no matter how many problems they have, get fired from their jobs, they have setbacks and difficulties. They just keep walking to KL. Just keep going. They just keep going. And they get there and people say, boy, you're sure lucky. No, you weren't. You make your own luck. You make your own luck by deciding where you're going and getting on the road. Now, I'm going to give you one of the key secrets to success for the rest of your life and share it with other people when they need it. It's one of the great secrets. In our world, in Singapore, we get paid for results. We get paid for getting the job done. Isn't that true? We don't get paid because we're handsome or pretty. Thank heavens. Thank heavens for all of us, right? We get paid because we get a result, because we perform, because we do the job. We do what is expected of us. We contribute value, okay? So, the only way we're going to get to the top 10% is by becoming very good at what we do. There's no shortcuts. We just have to get down and work at it. So, I'm going to ask you to do this. Ask yourself this question. What one skill in your field now, if you were excellent at it, would help you the most? You see, there's 5 to 7 core skills in every job. And it is our top skills that have got us to where we are, but it's our weakest skill that's holding us back. Your weakest skill sets the height of your income. Your weakest skill determines how much money you make. So if there's 7 key skills in selling, which there are, and you're brilliant at 6 of them, but weak at the 7th, that sets your income. So ask yourself, what one skill? It's really important. What one skill? And if you don't know the answer, you must find out. Ask your boss. Boss, what one skill, if I was really good at it, would increase my income the most? Ask your coworkers. Ask your customers. I did that once when I was living in Singapore. I asked one of my customers, what one skill would help me the most? And he told me, if you would stop talking so much and ask questions and listen more, you'd be far more effective. Well, I talk. Salespeople talk too much because we're nervous. We're nervous, so we overcome our nervousness by talking too much. Talk. Men especially. Men are worse at this than anyone else. So, and the reason we're in selling is because we get along well with other people. We're more sociable than other people. So talk. Anyway, so he said, instead of talking so much, ask more questions and listen, and you'll be more effective. And I did, and he was right. And that helped me an enormous amount. So ask people, what one skill, what one change in what I'm doing would help me more than anything else? And they'll tell you, if you were a superb prospector, if you were so good at prospecting that people were literally coming in the windows with their checks trying to buy from you, if they were lined up in the corridor when you got to work in the morning with their checks saying, me first, if you were such a good prospector that when you phoned, they said, thank heaven you phoned, can I send a car for you? If you were such a good prospector, would that double your income? Say yes. Okay, then set that as a goal. I'm going to be superb at prospecting. And then the only question you ask once you've set it as a goal is what? How? How do I become so good at prospecting that I have so many prospects I don't have time to see them all? That becomes your question, right? For the rest of your life, from now on, say, what one skill would help me the most? And it's always the skill where you're the weakest. And then you set it as a goal, and you make a plan, and you work on it every day until you bring that skill up. Now, you may not like it to start off with, and you may not be very comfortable with it, and you may not like prospecting or closing or something else. Well, boo-hoo for you, okay? Get over it and get on with learning how to do it well, right? If you're going to be in this business, you're going to have to master the key skills in this business, right? So don't give yourself excuses. Well, I'm not very good at prospecting. Well, shut up. Who cares what you're good at? The fact is that all business skills are learnable. Okay, say it. All business skills are learnable. If anybody else can learn to be good at prospecting, so can you. The fact that they're good at it is proof that you can be good at it as well. And if you double the number of good prospects you have, what will happen to your sales? They will double. And what will happen to your income? It will double. So let's figure out how to do it. All the optimist says is, how do I do it? What's the way? How do we do it? I know it's possible because they're an optimist. You have an unrealistic expectation of success. Sometimes people think that you're smoking something on the side, because you're so positive all the time. But the fact is, anything anyone else has done, you can do. Nobody's better than you. Nobody's smarter than you. Everybody's at the top of their field at once was an idiot. Sometimes those people were at the bottom and people made fun of them and they had no success and they had nothing. Now they're up there and everybody says, ooh. Oh. Believe me, anything that anyone else has done, you can do as well. Just make a decision what it is. Be absolutely clear. And then set your future, your ideal. Set the goal to achieve the ideal. Determine the skill that you'll need. Now here's the fourth orientation. And this is really important. It's called growth orientation. Now growth orientation is the key to the future. Lee Kuan Yew said that years ago, is that we have to have the smartest and best educated populace in the world, which Singapore just about damn near does. All right? Because this is a city-state built on brains. And our people have to be smart. We have to be connected to the internet. We have to be fluent in English. We have to be able to deal in the world market. This is brain power. So this whole country has been built on learning. And the key to your success is learning as well. Now, I was asked recently, what are the keys to continuous learning? What is the key to continuous growth? And I said that there's three things. Number one is read on a regular basis.
Reading is to the mind as exercise is to the body. If you don't read, it's like if you don't exercise your muscles, what happens to them? What happens to your muscles if you don't use them? Yeah, they atrophy. They become weak. They become useless. But if you use them, then they're strong and they work for you. They're available to you at all times. It's the same as reading. When you read, it takes total concentration. It activates more brain cells. It works out that muscles. It even amazes your mother-in-law. But you can actually become smarter. Just like you can build muscles by working out, you can actually build brains by reading on a regular basis. So the rule is read 30 to 60 minutes in selling each day, 5 days a week. If you do that, you'll read about a book a week. That'll translate into about 50 books a year. 50 books a year will make you one of the smartest and highest paid people in sales in your field. You'll go past everybody else in the business. I have been giving this advice since I learned it myself, and I've had people come back to me and say that it just was transforming. It was like waving a magic wand. People who were going in circles and frustrated and broke and living on the floor of their friends' homes and had no money began to read an hour a day. And their sales just took off like a flower blooming in the summertime. So, or in any weather. So, read on a regular basis. Now, the second is to attend all the seminars that you can. Be hungry for seminars. Be hungry for learning experiences. Let me ask you, what is the most precious thing that you have in the whole world? Time. It's your time, because your time is your life. So therefore, when you learn something that can help you jump ahead, you save life. You achieve the same goal in a couple of years that somebody else may take 5 or 10 years to achieve. So always trade money for time or life. And if it costs you a little bit to go to a seminar, pay the money, because you'll get it back 10, 20, 50, 100 times in not only increased income, but also in the years that you'll save to get to the same point. I've never met anybody who's gotten ahead who has done it just by standing there and waiting for it to happen. They've become very aggressive about learning. All of the highest paid people in sales are very aggressive about continuing to learn, as you are. So therefore, attend every seminar you can. Keep an eye open. Listen for them. Watch for them. And go to them. Because the return on your investment is 10, 20, 30, 50 times whatever the cost of the seminar is. Now, by the way, my friends here at Success Resources bring in and do the best seminars in the world. This is not a paid advertisement, but they bring in the best speakers and they organize the best seminars in the business. And right? The third thing is to listen to audio programs as you move around. Listen to audio programs on a regular basis. I was here, and my friend may be here, but I was here speaking a few years ago, and a friend of mine came to this seminar. He's a friend now, and he was broke. He was at the bottom of his business. He had started in sales. He had made no sales. He had no money. He was living with his wife in a bedroom in his mother's apartment, and he was at the bottom. He came to this seminar, and I offered a package of audio programs, 6 audio programs. He had no money. But he went home at lunchtime, and he went to his mother-in-law, and he asked her if he could borrow the money. And his mother-in-law loaned him the money. And he came back to the seminar, and he got the audio programs before they sold out, which they always do. 1 year later, he was at the top of his field. 2 years later, he was at the top of his business. 3 years later, he was the youngest person in the world inducted into the $1 Million Roundtable, the top insurance salespeople in the world. He said it totally transformed his life, increased his income 25 times. He said because of audio listening. Now, I'm not trying to influence you in any way. But growth orientation is really critical. It's important. You see, if I were to say to you, here is some stock for a company, would you like to buy some of this stock? Okay? It's a good company. And you looked at it, and you looked at all the material, and you said, no, I don't want to buy any of that stock. What would you be telling me? Well, you'd be telling me that you didn't think that was a good investment. Right? People who don't invest in themselves are saying a very, very bad thing. They're saying, I don't think that this is a good person to invest in. This company has no future. This person has no future. The interesting thing is that the more you invest in yourself, the more you believe in yourself, the more you like yourself, the more determined you become, the more confident you become, the better you get. The more you invest in yourself, the more it transforms you. People who don't invest in themselves, surprisingly enough, don't think that they're worth spending any money on. And you know what? Turns out to be true. Because your outer world is a reflection of your inner world. So remember, time is your most precious resource, and your most valuable asset is your earning ability. Your ability to earn money is the most important single factor you have. Your ability to apply your mind to earning money. And the person who earns 100,000 Singaporean and a person who earns 200,000 Singaporean, there's no difference in intelligence. No difference in basic ability. It's just a difference in earning ability. One has upgraded their skills and knowledge so they earn at this level, the other has not. And if you have a choice of 100,000 or 200,000 or 50,000 and 100,000, which should you choose? Take the bigger one, okay? And you have the choice. You just say, okay, I'll take the 100. You take the 50, I'll take the 100. Take the 100, okay? Take the 200. And the key is future orientation, goal orientation, excellence orientation, and growth orientation. Right? Whenever you prospect, always talk about the result or the benefit of your product or service. You see, a good prospect is interested in the result or benefit of what you sell. A poor prospect always says, how much is it? How much is it? How much is it? Well, you don't even know what it is yet, but how much is it? Well, that's too much. Well, it's too much for what? Well, whatever it is, it's too much. You know what I'm talking about, Henry? It solves the problem. Remember, a product or service that a person needs solves the problem if you can sell it to them. Why don't you give it a try? Even if they're taking you by the neck and throwing you out into the street, say, why don't you take it? Women know that they can control a little 100-pound woman can control a 200-pound man with questions. They can control him with questions so powerfully. They can control him with one-word questions. Oh? They can control him with nonverbal questions. He's across a crowded room talking to another woman, and she goes,